Well, now I know how some of you feel listening to this show every day when you're screaming at your radio, screaming at your Alexa, screaming at your KCMO Talk Radio app as I say something that makes you, for whatever reason, hot and bothered. Because that was me yesterday. Good morning. Happy Monday, by the way. As I'm watching the beginning of the Chiefs game, settling in, and CBS has amateur hour back in the New York City studios, apparently, where they decide that all of America is interested in a split-screen broadcast with the Browns and the Colts, two teams going absolutely nowhere, that nobody outside of Cleveland and Indianapolis and a few of you degenerate gamblers care about, and the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. That was... Oh, my goodness, John, I was yelling at the television yesterday.
I heard you.
Oh, you?
I was trying to get in chorus with you there. No, and it was ridiculous because, okay, I get the gamble on the network and say, hey, we'll go to this. It's going to be over pretty quick. It just drug out with the idiots falling all over themselves like a bunch of tools.
I know.
Oh, what an exciting ending this is.
Well,
a play with 4 seconds, a play with 2 seconds is like crime in it.
Oh, gosh, I'm so with you there. And the other thing that annoyed me, if you want to wait until, and I don't even know which team it was that ultimately got the go-ahead touchdown yesterday in that game. I think it was the Colts ultimately got the go-ahead touchdown. Maybe it was the Browns.
I think it was the Browns.
You're right. It was the Browns. Mm-hmm. They won 39-38. They kept it on that game with like 20 seconds left. I mean, goodness gracious.
Right. Okay, there's the exciting score. Now what?
Yeah, now we got to see the 2-point conversion? No, stop. Go to the Chiefs game. Oh, my goodness. And I'm not knocking our friends at KCTV5. To be clear, this had nothing to do with our partners at KCTV5.
I was concerned, but I saw my friend in San Diego who's a Chargers fan.
Yeah.
He was watching the game out on the West Coast, complaining, same thing.
It was a CBS New York thing. That's what this was. CBS New York. Now, of course, for the game itself, as you heard there from John on the news, Chiefs get the win yesterday over the Chargers, cover the spread. Mark, safe to say you didn't hit your 15-way parlay?
I was close. I was only a couple off again.
This ain't horseshoes, brother.
I know.
Close doesn't count. All right, so you did not hit the parlay because you're here to work this morning, most importantly. That's how I knew. I figured first off you'd text us if you hit your parlay. And then secondarily, I figured you wouldn't be at work today if you hit your parlay. But you didn't text us and you're at work, so you missed out just by a hair. That's okay. It was, what, a $5 parlay to win $500 or something?
$550, yeah.
Woo! So how many did you get?
I think I got 10 out of 13, maybe 11 out of 13.
All right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay. All right. You'll get there eventually. You're going to hit one of these this year. I can smell it. I can feel it for you. You're going to hit one. So the Chiefs get the win. Beginning of the game, broadcast was an absolute mess. That was beyond frustrating. And then, of course, you got, once again, Taylor Swift showing up at the game. And two things. First off, my goodness, my timeline on social media was littered with people complaining that Taylor Swift now is a handshake with Brittany Mahomes. Can I just...
I had friends trying to replicate it, so it goes the other way, too.
I want to hang out with your friends, because apparently I've got the wrong friends. I'm glad you have friends that enjoyed it, because oh, my gosh, this is so cringe. The world is on fire, literally. The world is on fire. If you are going to lose an ounce of sleep, if you are going to spend an ounce of your energy being bothered by two young women smiling, having fun, cheering on their men from a suite at Arrowhead Stadium, get a freaking life. Pick up a hobby, play golf, play cornhole. I don't care what it is, but get a hobby. Who cares? And by the way, I thought CBS handled it very, very well yesterday. Remember, CBS was the only network that has not had an opportunity to potentially benefit from ratings due to Taylor Swift. Since this whole thing started with the Chiefs and the Bears, gosh, a month ago now, CBS only had one game with the Chiefs in that 325 slot, and it was the Vikings game, and she was not at the Minnesota game. So this was their first opportunity to showcase Taylor Swift. And I thought Jim Nantz did the best job, and Tony Romo and CBS in general, of any of them. Why? Because they showed them, but they weren't constantly commentating on them. It was like going to a break. Boom, there they are, celebrating, high five, doing a little dance. But it wasn't, hey, did you guys know that's Taylor Swift? I don't know if anyone knew, but Taylor Swift's here. Like, they let the story tell itself through visuals. And that's, Jim Nantz is a little corny, but that's what makes him the best in the business, John.
What do you suppose the decision in New York went like? You say, what do you say, Taylor Swift or the Colts game? What should we split screen here? Taylor Swift or the Colts game? In that case, they made the right decision.
Yeah, well,
that was the decision to make.
Well, the first time they showed her, it was on the split screen.
Yeah.
And obviously, the guys in Kansas City probably don't know that back in New York, some meatheads decided to go to a split screen for the entire country instead of just putting on the Chiefs and putting on Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So those poor guys, but they made up for it, of course. She probably had, I'd say, a dozen appearances on the broadcast yesterday, give or take.
That handshake was highly syncopated.
Oh, clearly.
I'm fascinated as a boomer because our hand gestures are short and swift, basically. So.
They clearly practiced that one before the game.
I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
there's up, top, down, low, around the back. I don't know.
There was a few steps on that one.
Bump. That's
the
some
chest
guys
bump.
Will pay for that.
I was impressed with Brittany. She was doing it one-handed while holding Patrick LaVon Mahomes III.
Yeah.
So she had the baby in hand while still doing it.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, that'll be you soon enough, by the way. It's going to be you in December. Hey, you know how it is as a parent. When you got little kids, you realize how much you can actually do as you're balancing children in your hands and trying to do three things at once.
A guy like maybe a Phillies game with the baby catching the foul ball and holding his beer.
Yeah, that was impressive. Wow. By the way, here's what it sounded like. Jim Nantz going into a break. They show Taylor Swift do the little, the little handshake there with Brittany Mahomes.
To Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
So basically what they do is you hear Nantz say, touchdown to Valdez-Scantling, and then they let the bumper music play out. They show Taylor Swift, but they don't act like two little schoolgirls about it, which is exactly what you want. Tony Romo probably had to bite his tongue. I'm sure Romo had some total cheeseball commentary he was going to include.
Look at those dance moves, Jim. Oh, man.
But they told him to be quiet and handle it this way, and I thought CBS handled it the best of any network thus far.
And how about the one where Kelsey lines up outside Jawan Taylor and they make the comment, oh, there's Kelsey next to Taylor now.
Oh, I didn't see
Romo
that.
Snuck that one in.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, see, I didn't hear every piece of commentary.
They were talking about it and he quipped real quick.
Oh, that's good. That's well done by Tony. See, that's the kind of stuff that's creative, that's original, that's smart. I like that. But like NBC during the Jets game a few weeks back, oh, gosh, Tirico still gushing over that one. That was just unbelievable. But I thought CBS did a very good job yesterday.
Tirico was still mentioning it last night during the Eagles game.
Oh, goodness gracious. That guy's got to relax. Hey, someone tell Travis and Taylor they're not looking for a third wheel, Mike. Sorry, buddy. Sheesh. Unbelievable stuff. So, hey, it was a great Sunday. Beautiful weekend, by the way. Goodness gracious. You can ask for better weather in mid to late October. How great was that? Yesterday, perfect football weather. 70 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. Oh, my goodness. Hope you had a great weekend as we get it rolling on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. Now, speaking of comedy, how is comedy handling the terrorism and Israel's response on the other side of the world? Well, not as well as you would expect. We'll get to it coming up next on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7. What's happening in the Middle East is obviously tragic, but watching the progressives eat their own over the last couple of weeks has been something that, for all the tragedy, for all the destruction that has taken place back here in America, the reckoning is welcome. I will say that. And we're seeing it not just, in progressive political circles, but even in comedy. So I tried to find the audio, and I was searching every corner of the internet last night, and I couldn't find it. But the headlines are that Dave Chappelle triggered a walkout from his Boston show after the comedian called out Israel for committing war crimes. So now he has condemned the Hamas attacks, but of course, like many of his ilk, they are saying that Israel is allegedly committing war crimes, despite the fact that, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that Israel, as it always does, is trying to warn people ahead of time on places they are going to bomb, places they are going to strike, to get innocent civilians, women and children out of there. And it's Hamas leadership in Gaza who are actually preventing innocent civilians, women and children from getting out of the northern part of Gaza. We had a lot of video evidence and picture evidence of that last week that we shared with you here on the show. So whether it's Dave Chappelle doing this, this was the latest example, or the entire entertainment industry that is right now very split, because you and I both know that when it comes to entertainment, movies, TV, to a lesser extent radio, but certainly those two outlets, you have some of the most progressive people in our culture who happen to work in those places. And right now there's a major divide. There are those who are wildly progressive, who, of course, think that Israel is evil and the Palestinian people are, doing nothing but trying to protect themselves by obviously, going into Israel and slaughtering 1,400 civilians just over 2 weeks ago now? Like, you have that faction of people, and they are, in many ways, in the most progressive circles. Now, there's certainly a handful of pockets like that on the far right as well, and frankly, in many respects, the far, far left and the far, far right should get a room. But that's a conversation for another day. They have more in common than they realize. But that being said, the Wall Street Journal also had this story after Dave Chappelle triggered this walkout at his show over the weekend. The Wall Street Journal writes here in its headline piece, Israel-Hamas war sows division within entertainment industry. Says Dave Chappelle spars with a fan. Writers Union members criticize leaders over silence. And that includes Hollywood figures like Jerry Seinfeld and Sacha Baron Cohen, who have criticized the Writers Guild of America in an open letter. That letter read in part, when terrorists invade Israel to murder, rape, and kidnap Jews, the Guild stayed silent. And good for them. Like, I understand people like Jerry Seinfeld are probably never going to see the world the way I do and the way many of you do. But at the very least, if they can call out these outlets, these organizations who have stayed completely silent in the name of terrorism because they're afraid of the most uber progressive radicals that might have membership in their organization. If those are the people that they are afraid of offending, well, if it takes a Jerry Seinfeld or a Sacha Baron Cohen to call them out, good on them. Good on them, because we have learned the last 2 weeks or so who the real lunatics are right in this country. Now, they're still Americans. They have a right to free speech. I get all of that. But you want to talk about where the real radicals are and what's really going on when it comes to radical beliefs in this country? It's people who are standing by in silence after the tragedy of 2.5 weeks ago in Israel and have completely lost their minds when it comes to screaming about things like ceasefires. Hey, you just got 1,400 people slaughtered. Stop the killing. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how they have reacted over the last couple of weeks. And even I would not have predicted it. I would have expected, maybe a touch of this, but not to the tune that we've seen. And the fact that now the entertainment industry is at each other's throats, when usually, they were all singing Kumbaya, just like high-fiving each other, making fun of Trump. I mean, they were living the good life.
Such a cute soundbite.
But now they're going after each other. All of a sudden, the way that they were simpatico over the last really 7-8 years, when entertainment and comedy in particular went hard in against Donald Trump, they've basically been on the same page. This is a moment in entertainment and specifically in comedy that has them divided in a way that they haven't been in a very long time. And I'm just telling you, I'm here for it, man. There's only one or two of them that are actually making sense. Bill Maher, I'll try to get this later in the morning, but Bill Maher was brilliant again over the weekend, talking about the insanity on these college campuses, how ridiculously out of control they've gotten, sympathetic to Hamas terrorists. Bill Maher, if you are not watching his show, and, there's plenty that Bill Maher and I would also disagree with, but he's on the right side of history here. That is indisputable. Bill Maher's on the right side of history. And by the way, if you're here with us on KCMO Talk Radio on 95.7, you are also on the right side of history. So welcome in on a Monday morning. Hope your week's off to a great start. Appreciate you being here on KCMO. Coming up on a serious note, the worst press conference on the weekend came from one of the squad members. We'll get to it next. Well, you might have missed this because it was an absolute embarrassment to the United States Congress, which is hard to do today. I mean, they're throwing speakers of the House out. They can't find a new one. They've got radicals in the progressive movement who are doing press conferences sympathetic towards Hamas. I mean, if I didn't trust the system and our founding fathers as much as I did, I would say burn the whole thing down. Because we really are just represented by embarrassing individuals. And unfortunately, the loudest and most embarrassing individuals are the ones who oftentimes seem to get the most attention. It's kind of like reality TV. The bigger of a jackass you are, the more likely you are to get famous.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's the world that we live in with Congress as well. And it's sad to say. But over the weekend, Ilhan Omar, one of the squad members from up in Minneapolis, she did a press conference in the rain, which, I don't know, the whole thing was quite telling and quite a scene. So she does this press conference in the rain, and by now you know that that squad movement, which includes Missouri's own Cori Bush, I will add, by the way, she ends up putting herself in a position to be sympathetic towards these terrorists on the other side of the planet. And even by her standards, I'm sitting here, I'm watching this, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So first off, I've got two here from Ilhan Omar I want to share with you to really get you going on a Monday morning here in Kansas City. Ilhan Omar talking about how a ceasefire is what needs to happen right now. Apparently completely ignoring the horrific terrorist attack, the worst attack on the Jews since the Holocaust. Completely ignoring that from, 2 weeks ago now. Here she is.
I want to say how insane and painful and scary it is to work and serve in a space where we have a member in our caucus say all Muslims are responsible for this, and not a single condemnation comes from our caucus leadership or any member of Congress. How is it that we are serving in a body where there are members who condemn us for asking for peace, for ceasefire? The most simplest thing.
The most simplest thing. We'll work on the English language another time. Let's instead focus on the beyond obnoxious. I'm sorry to play that for you this early in the morning. If you weren't awake, now you are, by the way. I'll just add that to the mix. If you hadn't had your cup of coffee, you might be able to skip it this morning after hearing that screeching noise from Ilhan Omar.
I take a little bit of joy knowing that she's upset myself.
Well, me too.
That doesn't say much about me, but so be it. I'll own it.
And I know you're not alone there, John, because I'm right there with you. So for her to play the victim card in all this, for Ilhan Omar, who has been the most sympathetic member of Congress, AOC's gone along with it, but she doesn't actually know what she's saying and what she's doing.
Yeah, there's slight difference there.
She literally has no idea. She's just going along to get along with the radicals. Ilhan Omar actually believes this. She is actually picking the side of the terrorists. Hey, it's time for a ceasefire after, your slide just slaughtered 1,400 people. Hey, would you guys stop it already? Knock it off. Ceasefire, please. And then the audacity of Ilhan Omar to play the victim card in all this. To say how scary it is to be in her situation, to be in her shoes. The audacity of this woman who is in the United States Congress to take the approach that she's taking. And by the way, she's talking about how people should be condemning Israel. Where is her own party leadership to condemn her? That's what I want to know. Where's Joe when you need him? I mean, come on, man. Where is he? I know he was on the beach in Delaware this week, and if you missed that, there's a couple dozen U.S. hostages on the other side of the world, and Joe's strolling down Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great time of year to be strolling down the beach. You got a little windbreaker on and the whole thing, but you have Americans being held hostage by the worst terrorists on planet Earth, and this guy's, walking up and down the beach. Like he's Michael Douglas in Wall Street. I mean, what is he thinking? So Ilhan Omar does this press conference, and she's upset that, I don't know, people are on the side of Israel, I guess. And yet nobody has condemned her. Nobody has condemned some of her rhetoric. And the rhetoric from Ilhan Omar got even worse when she said this. So you got to listen closely. A reporter actually asked her a decent question. I'll play it for you here. Why don't you want the Israelis to go after the terrorists? That was the question from that reporter to Ilhan Omar, right? And that's what Israel's doing. They're going after the terrorists. They are trying to give innocent civilians an opportunity to get out of the places where they're targeting the terrorists. War is not pretty, but boy, not many countries, not many groups of people have been as sympathetic as Israel. So that's a very fair question to ask Ilhan Omar, and take a listen to this meltdown.
How many more killings is enough for you? Is it 1,000 more? 2,000 more? 3,000 more? How many more Palestinians would make you happy if they died? Will you be fine if all of the people of Gaza were gone? Would that make you happy? Would that be the thing that makes you proud? And maybe that's the question you should ask Richie. Is he okay? How many more Palestinian lives is he comfortable with? Because I'm not comfortable with any more.
This is absolutely lit. This is lit, 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 lit.
That was Ilhan Omar, representative out of Minneapolis, with the ultimate straw man argument. No one is asking for innocent Palestinian lives to be lost. What Israel is doing, rightfully so, is defending themselves and going after the worst terrorists on planet Earth, who, if they had a nuclear bomb, would try to wipe every Jew off the face of the earth, starting with Israel. Hate to be blunt on a Monday morning, but those are the facts. That is the truth. And for Ilhan Omar to do the whole, how many people need to die for you to be satisfied? Well, you're kind of rewriting recent history here, Congresswoman, the nicest thing I'm willing to call you right now. You're completely rewriting history on how we got here. To have your country attacked with the equivalent of, depending on who you ask, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11s, and then say, you're going to respond? Oh, boy, you are just a fan of death and destruction. Boy, that is next level trolling from Ilhan Omar. And it is the ultimate straw man argument to say, well, if you think Israel should respond, well, you just want dead people all over the streets. No. There's only one group of people on the planet that don't mind that, and that is the Hamas leadership. They are completely fine with their civilians being taken out if it means winning the propaganda war against Israel. And we know that, sad to say, here in the U.S., there are groups of people that will gladly do it, and some of those groups are sitting members in the United States Congress, which is beyond disturbing. Imagine post 9/11. We had people sympathizing with Al-Qaeda. That's what we're dealing with right now. That's who we have in the U.S. Congress. And they're not that far away. I'd love to hear from Sharice Davids here in the 3rd District, Emanuel Cleaver. Emanuel Cleaver, to his credit, has been a very staunch supporter of Israel in all this the last couple of weeks, much to the chagrin of some of the wokest members in Kansas City. I'd love to hear Emanuel Cleaver or Sharice Davids on the Kansas side condemn what we are hearing from people like Ilhan Omar. And by the way, the media always does that to Republicans. One Republican might say something that's, little out there, and every Republican has to be asked about it. It never happens on the Democratic side, though.
Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene will say something.
Yes.
What do you think about it?
Yeah, what do you have to say about Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments? Ilhan Omar is out here sympathizing with global terrorists, and Kansas City Star, anybody locally going to ask Emanuel Cleaver's office or Sharice Davids what they think of this? Or no? Funny how that works. 6:44, happy Monday as we get it rolling here on KCMO Talk Radio. Kendall Gammon will be here just after 7 o'clock on the Chiefs game from yesterday afternoon. Now, let's stay in Minneapolis for a second. There are 2 viral stories of law enforcement that are really embarrassing. And it makes you wonder how we got here. I'll get to it coming up next. We got 2 viral cop stories. They happen to be coming out of Minneapolis, both of them, interestingly enough. And it makes you wonder how we got here with law enforcement in general. And there's a lot that goes into it. I think that, here's the thing. When you spent the last 3 years trashing this profession and having media tell the American people that it's awful to be a cop, you're a bad person if you become a cop, all cops want to just, arrest and shoot black people, especially the white ones, it's an absolute disgrace. But you make the job so unappealing that, unfortunately, you may have people on your police force who in a typical environment would have never been accepted to be on the police force. So this first story here, over the weekend, Minneapolis cops suspended for sending a picture of his junk to someone he met on a dating app and then hooking up with them while on duty. Okay. According to the Star Tribune, text messages submitted to the police department's internal affairs show an exchange between a 28-year-old officer and an unidentified person on a dating app during one of his overnight shifts. During the exchange, the officer reportedly sent a picture of his privates. The Minneapolis cop then asks if the civilian would be interested in giving him favors to, quote, a cop in uniform, end quote. The civilian agrees, sends the officer their location, and requests a picture of his face. The officer responds by sending a selfie in what appears to be his uniform from inside his squad car. He then receives a suggestive picture from the civilian, to which he responds, okay, give me a sec. Let's see if I can leave this call. The guy's on a call. He's on a call on behalf of the taxpayer, and he's trying to bail out of it to go hook up with somebody he met on a dating app who wants to be with a cop. The officer then sends another message 10 minutes later. He had made it to the apartment and was ready for action. He was given the instructions on how to go about being buzzed up to the civilian's apartment. The timestamps associated with the messages show that they were exchanged over 2.5 hours during his overnight shift. The officer was placed on leave, escorted out of the police department this month after arriving for a scheduled shift on October 7th. So that's story number 1 out of Minneapolis. And we'll stay in Minneapolis with this story that came out a couple of weeks prior. The Minneapolis Police Department is investigating an officer for her side gig as an OnlyFans model after she pulled over a subscriber during a traffic stop. The unidentified cop is being probed for any policy violations she may have committed running the adult content subscription service while working for the department. The driver said it took him 10 minutes to recognize the 35-year-old officer as someone he's seen over the past 5 months, posting explicit photos online. The driver told Fox 9 in Minneapolis, we were doing a little talking and checking, and I was like, man, she's got an OnlyFans page. I'm on her OnlyFans page. I appreciate the honesty of the driver, by the way. He wasn't like, yeah, my friend has an OnlyFans page, and he happened to show me this OnlyFans cop. It's like, no, he was like, yeah, I'm a subscriber. Yep, that's me. So how did, this is both in Minneapolis. How did we get here? Where we have cops getting busted for, now I know that some of this is nothing new. This is not the first time, especially with the male cop, that a male cop has done something like this. But the coincidence that this happens in the same city, in the same department, which, by the way, was ground zero for destroying law enforcement over the past 3 years, I don't believe is a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Minneapolis Police Department is having these kinds of issues. Just like I don't think it's a coincidence that Kansas City is going to have issues with recruiting law enforcement in the years ahead. Heck, they've been having them right now. We're down 300 cops here in Kansas City. I was talking, this was months ago, to some old school Kansas City cops. They had been on the force, retired. Some were still on it, but towards the back end. And they talked about going through the program to become a cop in Kansas City 30, 35 years ago. And how there were hundreds of guys and gals who would show up. And they'd get in line, they'd take their tests. It was competitive. Now, as it's been told to me, if you got 2 arms, 2 legs, and you could add 2 and 2 and get 4, I'm not going to say you get a gun and you get a badge, but the point being, the standards have come down tremendously from a generation or two ago because they just can't get the people in there. They can't recruit, but they need bodies. And that's not to knock anybody who's a young cop on the police force in Kansas City, Missouri right now. That's not the purpose of this. But the point is, the standards have come down and everybody knows it. And that's how you end up with these viral stories of people being like, yeah, I'm a cop, but I think I'll do some OnlyFans on the side. Or somebody else being like, yeah, sure, I'm on my overnight shift. Let me get on this dating app and, text this young lady and see if she wants to hang out with a cop for a couple hours. While the taxpayers are paying this individual to theoretically keep him safe and go on calls. This is what you get. And by the way, what does this lead to? If the cops are not held to as high of a standard as they were, if the threshold to become a cop is not as high as it was, what comes out of that? Likely lesser service. And on top of that, the people who are more likely, sad to say, to make a critical mistake in a job where a half a second can change somebody's life. That's what this can lead to. And that's the worst part about all this. The people who are screaming for the last 3 years about, oh, gosh, the cops are the worst. We need better cops. We need this. We need that. What have they pushed for? Well, what they pushed for has actually led to a law enforcement department, and I say this across the board, that is not nearly as safe and as prestigious as it was 4, 5, 6 years ago. And I don't say that with any joy. I think it's sad, but I think that's a trend that's only going to continue. It is going to take a generation to dig out of this malaise of law enforcement that we've dealt with the last 3 years. And you can blame the media, and you can blame one political party as far as I'm concerned. Welcome in. Happy Monday morning. It is good to be starting off a new week with you here on KCMO Talk Radio as we had some wind and storms blow through parts of the metro this morning, and we're getting set for another day of an Indian summer. Can we still say that? I don't know, but we're going to enjoy it here on KCMO Talk Radio. Tomorrow morning at this time, it will be one of the most important conversations we've ever had here on KCMO. For a half hour tomorrow morning, we are going to have a conversation with Sarah DeValconaire. She is the wife of former KCPD detective Eric DeValconaire, who, of course, had his conviction upheld and is heading to prison following the now 4-year-old shooting of Cameron Lamb that has garnered national attention. So she put up a post on social media. Sarah DeValcanair did over the weekend. I guess it was late last week this post went up. And it's now been shared 1,500 times. And I'm going to put it up on our social media pages. Mark, if you could pop it on the KCMO page, we'll talk about that during the break. But she put up this very long and thoughtful post asking people to share it. And basically the crux of what she is asking for is to have Missouri residents call the governor's office and urge him to pardon Eric DeValcanair. She goes on the right here. This is a post I never could have imagined I would be writing, but I'm going to do my best to show you who my husband, Eric DeValcanair, really is. Over the past 3.5 years, I've remained silent for the most part. I just kept saying, pray, wait, trust. Things will change. This is such a miscarriage of justice that it will get fixed. I truly believed in my heart it would, but it didn't. My heart is broken, but I am strong and I will fight for my husband. I can't let the false information continue any longer. I started dating Eric when he was 18, and we have been together ever since. It's been a privilege and honor to be married to a man who was raised to treat women with respect. He knew early on he wanted to be a police officer and follow his dad's footsteps. He dedicated over 2 decades of his life to serving the city of Kansas City. He was a great cop and detective and earned many awards over the years, including the Life-Saving Award. Being a cop is hard. Being a Leo spouse is also hard. Law enforcement officer. You worry when they leave each day if they will come home, especially if they work in a big city with lots of crime. One thing I never worried about, writes Sarah DeValcanair, is that my husband would be prosecuted and convicted for doing his job. Eric saved another detective's life that day. I can assure you my husband would not fire his duty weapon unless it was to defend himself or someone else, period. He did what he was trained to do, and another detective is alive today because he did. She says here, we will be celebrating our 23rd anniversary this year. We got married when we were just 22 and 23 years old. We started a family soon after, and we were fortunate enough to be blessed with 3 wonderful children. My kids are great kids. Do you know why? Because Eric took his job of raising them seriously. He was there every day from the time they were born. He changed diapers, fed them bottles in the middle of the night, helped care for them when they were sick. Yes, these are things all dads should do, but sadly, not all of them do. Not all dads are there for their kids in every way when they decide to have children, but he was. He coached all their teams, football, baseball, basketball, softball. He was not only a positive role model in their life, but in their lives of so many others he helped coach as well. Eric is an honest man who has integrity, and he does not deserve what is happening to him. He's an amazing husband, father, coworker, neighbor. We all need him home. Sarah DeValcanair writes, I need your help. I need Missouri residents to call 573-751-3222 and urge the governor to grant him a pardon. He was a law enforcement officer doing his job that day, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that he did what he had to do to save a fellow officer's life, period. There's no other story. Please share this post. I need it to reach as many people in Missouri as possible. Thank you, and please keep praying. I still have faith. That is the Facebook post that has been shared 1,500 times by Sarah DeValcanair. We'll get it up on our KCMO page there, Mark. I'll pop that in the 7:30 slot. You can post it there and share it there because that's what needs to be shared and noted. So tomorrow at this time, she is going to join us here in the KCMO Talk Radio studios to tell her side of the story. Because as she noted in this Facebook post, she has remained silent for basically 4 years now. I mean, that Cameron Lamb shooting happened in late 2019. And for 4 years, the family expected the Justice Department, or I should say justice, to be served. And it wasn't. And there's a lot of things that Sarah DeValcanair is going to share tomorrow on this show that are things I didn't even know about this case, about this story. I mean, there were multiple things in talking to folks over the weekend who have the police reports that have not been publicly reported, that the media has completely whitewashed and have chosen, this doesn't really fit the narrative, so, we'll leave this convenient little tidbit out, right? Well, this doesn't make the story as compelling. White cop shoots black man. And let's just be honest. That's why the media jumped on this thing. That's why they love this story. It's sick. It's really sick, but that's why they love this story. It fits a narrative. And it's why Kansas City media jumped on this 4 years ago now. And then, of course, in the wake of George Floyd, it became even more of a spectacle and a bigger story. And there's a lot of things from what happened that day nearly 4 years ago that have not gotten the attention that they should in this Eric DeValcanair case. So it is going to be an incredibly important conversation to have tomorrow with Sarah. We're looking forward to having her here in the studio. And you're going to hear things about this story that nobody else in media has told you. They've just either purposely chosen to black it out. They've conveniently left out some of these facts, whatever it might be. These are things that if you care about justice in the state that you live in the region that you live in, even if you're on the Kansas side of the state line, it doesn't really matter. If you care about justice, then this story should matter to you in a lot of ways. And I don't know what Governor Parson's going to do. I mean, I've said since last week, I don't think he's going to do it. I would love to be wrong. I want to be wrong. But there's a couple of problems here. First off, a lot of these judges that upheld the conviction, his appointed judges. Is he going to go against his own judges? He should, but I don't know if he will. And two, I don't know if he's got the backbone to do it. I don't know if he should. He's a former sheriff. I'd like to think if anybody could, it'd be Mike Parson, but I don't know if he's got the backbone to do it. I don't know if he's got, frankly, the balls to do it. We'll see. We'll find out soon enough. 573-751-3222. That is the phone number to call the governor's office to ask him to pardon Eric DeValcanair. We told you about this Missouri teacher, 2 weeks ago now, I think this was. Brianna Coppage, her name, 28 years old. She was an English teacher, St. Clair High School, about an hour outside of St. Louis, and was placed on leave before ultimately resigning once administrators discovered her racy side hustle. Coppage was using OnlyFans to make extra money that would help her pay off student loans from her advanced degrees. She says that she started doing it to supplement her income, and before you know it, she was making a lot of money. In fact, she was making more money than she was as a teacher, which was $42,000 a year. So OnlyFans, for those of you that don't know, is essentially a website where you can create your own adult entertainment without having to be hired by some big agency or website or outlet or something like that. Aren't I so good at explaining these things to make it safe for the kids in the car? I've become an expert at this. When you have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, you get asked a lot of questions on the spot, and you got to figure out how to answer them in an appropriate manner sometimes. So this is really something that I've gotten very good at, John. It's really become a forte of mine.
You might be up for White House press secretary here. So to speak.
That's good. That's good, yeah. Can't be much worse than who's in the role right now.
Tougher audience, when you're dealing with the 2- and 4-year-old.
I agree. Yeah. They ask a lot more follow-up questions than the clowns do in the White House press briefing room. Yeesh. So we now know that Coppage, she's left her job as a teacher. Why? Well, she's now among the platform's top creators, raking in nearly $1 million since she began the account over the summer. So she was making already a lot of money. But then when the story went viral, well, what happens? A bunch of guys start, maybe I should subscribe to her OnlyFans. And it was actually good for her OnlyFans account. Now, there's obviously morally a lot wrong here. And some people are going to look at the story and say, see, we got to pay our teachers more. And we do have to pay our teachers more. We need to have an education system that pumps more money into the classroom so teachers are not having to consider alternative income streams, and less money to the people in administration in these schools and these school districts. That's the problem. We have people that want to become teachers, yet we then also require them to go into tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt to become a teacher, where they start off making even less money than, let's say, $40,000 a year. She's making $42,000 by the time she's 28. And she's like, hey, in Biden's economy, this ain't enough. Jeesh. I mean, I gotta make some real money here. I need some help. That's what I need. So I understand why she feels that way. Like, I get it. We all understand. It's been a rough couple of years when it comes to, how much things have gone up in prices. So it's very difficult. And there's a lot of people trying to figure out what to do about it.
God save the Queen, man.
So the problem is not that she went to OnlyFans, although that's problematic in and of itself for moral reasons. But in terms of the economic side of it, in terms of, what we're encouraging people to do or desperate things that people are doing to try to make money to live, to get out of student loan debt, that's a failure of the system. There's the moral side, then there's the systematic side. And the systematic side is that we have people who want to be teachers who are only making $42,000 a year and have to go into tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt to do it. That is not a sustainable model, and it's one that we find ourselves in right now.
And you have Mr. Fart Jokes in the Olathe district too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Remember him locally?
That's
right.
right.
I make $45,000.
Oh, yeah. The guy, yes, the Olathe teacher who was fired 2 weeks ago.
So kind of in a sense, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like, he's
with
just
that guy,
a clown.
They would probably paid him to put stuff back on.
Yeah,
he could have made money on OnlyFans.
That guy would just wanted to be a comedian.
Yeah.
Right? And he was using his kids because he wanted to be a comedian. Mm-hmm. And now he gets to go on his comedy tours because Olathe blew him out because he was making fart jokes in front of his kids.
Right. Now, so the teacher on OnlyFans didn't do anything with students, obviously.
Correct. Yeah. There was nothing involving students. This was literally just what we would call a side hustle, for lack of a better word, that lack of a better phrase. So she starts this
side. Made $1 million.
Yeah, and then she made $1 million since the summer with her OnlyFans. So there's a lot of problems, but I'll tell you what, there's the moral problem, and then there is the systematic problem. And when we're asking people to become teachers and go into tens of thousands of dollars in debt to do it, and then paying them $42,000 a year, it's not a problem. But the problem is not the amount of money we spend on public education. By the way, in Kansas and Missouri, we spend $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 a kid on public education. We've got 7 assistant principals. They're all making 6 figures, while the teachers are like, hey, can I get money to cover like my crafts in class? No, wait, jeez. It's tight these days. If only the taxpayers gave us some more money, we'd be okay. That's not the problem.
I guess most of these OnlyFans things are like, we're talking about teachers, and it never is the assistant principal, as you just mentioned, is kind of what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's never the person making 6 figures as the assistant principal.
Salaries, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And there's too many of them. There's way too many people in the administration on these jobs. 913-408-7957. That is the studio number and the text line here on KCMO. So we switched that up with the change to 95.7 FM. So put that one in your phone as we get it rolling on a Monday morning on KCMO. If you didn't see it, Travis Kelce confirmed Jack Stack and First Watch guy. Daily Mail had the exclusive. Early this morning, they had paparazzi all over Kelce's house last night after the game. He had Jack Stack delivered to the house, catered at the house for Taylor and his buddies. And then somehow, I don't know how the Daily Mail got this, but Taylor had a turkey omelet from First Watch delivered to the house on Sunday morning. She landed in Kansas City at 11:30 before going to the game, went to Travis's house, and I guess they cornered the delivery guy, the Daily Mail did, because they got her order and they also got confirmation that Travis is a regular First Watch guy. By the way, I wish he would do First Watch commercials instead of Pfizer and Bud Light commercials. I mean, geez.
Come on, man.
I know that First Watch doesn't do a lot of advertising. As far as I can tell, they don't need to. They're great. But can we get give me a Jack Stack commercial? Come on. I know the Pfizer money and the Bud Light money's good. But, geez, a couple local businesses, maybe they can't afford Kelsey, but I would much rather see him doing a Jack Stack commercial, eating some beans and burnt ends from Jack Stack instead of having him sipping a Bud Light, sitting around doing nothing. Yeesh. Mike Zinnigy, top of the hour. He's going to be here just after 9 o'clock, talk about what's going on in Overland Park. Do not miss that here on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM, 95.7 FM, of course, is the place to find us. Hit that preset, 95.7 FM here on KCMO Talk Radio.